Imagine you're standing on that perfect tropical beach. The sand is like powdered sugar under your feet, the water a gradient of impossible blues, and the palm trees sway in a rhythm older than time. You take a deep breath, feeling that unique peace that only this place can offer. And then your eyes land on an annulled, sun-bleached piece of driftwood resting on the shoreline. It's a cliché, a background prop in the photo of paradise. Most people step over it, or maybe they pick it up, think it looks cool, and toss it back down. But what if I told you that this simple piece of wood is not a prop, but the main character? What if I said that this driftwood is in fact a secret agent, a cosmic messenger, and a living library, all rolled into one? And that by understanding its journey, you are looking at the most truthful map of the world ever drawn. A map not of political borders, but of currents, storms, and the very pulse of the earth itself. That piece of wood you almost ignored is the key to seeing the beach, not as a postcard, but as a vibrant, connected, and shockingly ancient crossroads. Its journey here is an epic saga, millions of years in the making, starting not in the ocean, but in the heart of a continent. This isn't just a story about wood getting wet. This is a detective story, written in water and wind, and we are about to become the detectives. To crack the driftwood code, we must first erase the beach from our minds, go back, centuries back, to a steep mountainside and a vast inland rainforest. Here, a tree, let's say a massive kapok or a mighty cedar, has stood for hundreds of years. It has weathered storms, housed countless creatures, and breathed in tons of carbon dioxide, locking it away in its sturdy fibers. This tree is not just a plant, it is a fortress, a city, a cornerstone of its ecosystem. Then, one day, a catastrophic event occurs, a landslide triggered by an earthquake, or the relentless undercutting of a river swollen by a distant monsoon. The tree's foundation is ripped away, and with a groan that echoes through the forest, it falls. But its death is not an end, it is a transformation, a change of career. It tumbles into a freshwater river, a completely alien environment for a giant that once reached for the sky. It is now a navigator, but a clumsy, tumbling one. For years, perhaps decades, it journeys down this liquid path. It gets waterlogged, it gets slammed into rocks. Its bark is stripped away by the sandpaper of the riverbed. It's a process of simplification, of shedding its old identity. The complex organism is being reduced to its toughest, most resilient core. It's not decaying, it's being prepared. This freshwater journey is the first chapter of its manual, the first line of its code. The minerals it absorbs from the river, the specific patterns of scarring from the rocks it encounters, these are clues. A scientist could analyze its isotopes and tell you with startling accuracy which river basin it came from. This driftwood is already telling its story. We just haven't learned to listen. Finally, after this epic continental voyage, the river widens. The water changes taste from fresh to brackish, and the tree, now a log, is spat out into the vast, open mouth of the ocean. This moment is as significant as a rocket leaving Earth's atmosphere. It has left the realm of the local, the national, and has entered the global highway. The salt water is a shock. It kills any remaining freshwater organisms hitching a ride and invites a whole new set of marine colonizers. But more importantly, the log is now subject to a new set of laws. The laws of the ocean currents. It is no longer pushed by the one-directional flow of a river. It is now drafted into the immense, slow-moving conveyor belts of the planet. It has joined the great oceanic migration, a journey with no set destination, governed by the forces that truly run our world. And as it bobs into that deep blue horizon, leaving the muddy river plume behind, it begins the longest and most transformative leg of its existence, a leg that will write the rest of its secret message onto its very bones. So our log is now adrift in the open ocean, a tiny speck on a monstrous blue desert. This is where the story gets cosmic. It's no longer just a piece of wood, it's a satellite, a probe sent into the void to collect data, and the data it collects is written by the most powerful forces on Earth. The first scribe is the sun. Day after day, month after month, the tropical sun bombards it with ultraviolet radiation. This is no gentle tanning, it's a relentless bleaching process that breaks down the complex organic compounds near the surface, bleaching the wood a silvery gray. This sun bleaching is a clock. The more uniform and deep the gray, the longer its exposure, telling a silent tale of years spent on the equatorial highway. But the sun also warms the wood, creating a microclimate, a tiny floating island that becomes a lifesaver in the marine desert. Within weeks, it is no longer alone. The second scribe is life itself. Barnacle larvae, floating in the plankton soup, sense its presence and settle on its underside. They cement themselves for life, creating rough, white constellations on the wood. Their shells grow, layer by layer, recording the chemistry of the seawater they filter fed from each day. Then come the bryozoans, forming delicate lace-like colonies. A tiny crab might scuttle into a crevice, claiming the log as its fortress. Algae begin to coat it, providing a green tinge and food for others. This log has become an ecosystem, a floating reef. It is now a vessel for biodiversity, carrying coastal species across oceanic barriers they could never cross on their own. It is an ark. But the most important scribe of all is the water itself, the currents. It might get caught in the immense, slow gyre of the North Pacific or South Atlantic, going around in a leisurely loop for years. Or it might be swept up by a faster-moving boundary current like the Gulf Stream or the Kuroshio, becoming a speedster on the oceanic highway. The patterns of wear tell this story. Constant, gentle swells in a gyre might wear it smooth. A journey through stormier, higher latitude waters might batter it, twist it, and split it into smaller pieces. It might even catch a ride on a deep, cold current, spending time in the frigid darkness before upwelling back to the surface thousands of miles away. Every splash, every scrape, every day of floating in calm or stormy seas is encoded in its shape, its texture, its density. It is absorbing the very essence of the ocean, its salt, its minerals, its temperature fluctuation. It is becoming a physical recording of the ocean's mood. Now let's talk about the shocking part, the hook I promised. This driftwood is a courier for something invisible but world-changing: carbon. Remember that tree that locked away carbon for centuries? When it fell and started to decompose on land, that carbon would have slowly returned to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. But by falling into the river and going to sea, it changed the plan. The ocean is Earth's largest carbon sink. As our log floats, marine organisms feed on it. But the cold, oxygen-poor waters of the deep ocean slow decay to a crawl. When this waterlogged wood finally becomes too heavy and sinks, often in the deep ocean far from land, it takes that century's worth of carbon with it, sequestering it on the seafloor for potentially thousands more years. This piece of driftwood, therefore, is not passive. It is an active soldier in the planet's carbon cycle. It is performing a vital geoengineering service for free. Every piece of driftwood on every beach represents carbon that is not in our atmosphere, warming our planet. So when you pick it up, you are literally holding a climate change mitigator. But the journey isn't over. After its epic oceanic voyage, which could last decades and span ocean's fate, must bring it to shore. And this final approach is the most dramatic chapter yet, where the ocean finally surrenders its secret agent back to the land, but to a land it has never known. The journey home, or to a new home, is a violent and precise ballet. Our log, now a seasoned traveler etched with the maps of ocean currents and the journals of sun cycles, feels a new pull. Perhaps a major storm, a hurricane spinning over the ocean, churns the waters and creates powerful onshore surges. Or maybe it simply drifts into the gentle embrace of a longshore current that runs parallel to a continent. For years, it might travel just out of sight of land, a ghost ship on the coastal frontier. The key to its final landing is the loss of buoyancy. Over its long voyage, it has absorbed tons of seawater. It has been tunneled by shipworms, which are actually saltwater clams and other boars, making it heavier. It sits lower in the water. Then, on a perfectly normal tide, a wave larger than the rest catches it just right. It's pushed over the sandbar, through the crashing surf zone, a place of tremendous energy where the ocean's power is fully spent. It tumbles, grinds against the sand, and is finally dumped onto the wet shore with a thud. It has arrived. But on which shore? This is the final clue in the Driftwood Code. The beach itself is the answering machine, the recipient of the message. A tropical beach with pure white sand and palm trees is a specific kind of receiver. The white sand is often made of calcium carbonate ground up coral and shells, telling you you're in a coral reef ecosystem. The presence of palm trees indicates a climate free of frost. So a log has landed in a very specific, stable, and warm environment. But look at the other driftwood around it. Is it all similar? If you see logs of massive tropical hardwoods, you can guess they came from a nearby source, maybe the river mouths of the same island chain. But if you see a log of pine or spruce on your tropical beach, that is a telegram from another world. That tree grew in a frigid boreal forest, perhaps in Alaska or Siberia. It made its way down a mighty river like the Yukon or the Lena into the Arctic Ocean, was possibly even frozen into sea ice for a few years, a pause in its journey before being released, traveling around the Arctic basin, and then catching the southern flow of a current, like the Labrador Current, transferring to the Gulf Stream, and finally being delivered to this tropical paradise as a gift from the polar north. This is not fantasy, this happens. The beach becomes a museum of world wood, a gallery of global botany, all arranged by the curators of current and tide. Now let's decode the log itself on this beach. Its position is the first sign. Is it high up on the beach, nestled in the vegetation line? That means it arrived on a huge storm surge or a king tide, and it's been there for a while, becoming a permanent part of the dune ecosystem, trapping sand and helping to build the beach. Is it down near the waterline, still wet and shifting with each tide? It's a fresh arrival, its story still being written. Now examine it. Turn it over. The side that was facing down in the sand will be darker, perhaps still covered in barnacles and algae. The top side, exposed to the sun, will be that classic bleached gray. The wear patterns will tell you about its final approach. Is it smoothed from rolling in the gentle sandy surf? Or is it splintered and smashed from being thrown against rocks before landing here? Every scar is a sentence, and the life on it is changing again. The marine hitchhikers are dying in the open air, but new tenants are moving in. Beach fleas and insects find shelter. A seed, perhaps from a coastal plant, carried by the wind or a bird, lands in a crevice filled with a bit of sand and decaying wood matter. It sprouts. That piece of driftwood has now become a seed nursery, a planter box for colonizing vegetation. It has gone from a tree to a navigator to an ark to a carbon courier, and now to a cradle for new life. Its final act on the beach is one of creation, closing the circle in a new location. But here's where you, the beachgoer, enter the story. For centuries, humans have seen driftwood and understood its value instinctively. It's fuel for a fire, material for a shelter, the first piece of furniture on a deserted island. When you see it as just cool-looking wood, you're tapping into that ancient recognition of utility. But now, knowing its journey, your perception shifts. That fire you might build is burning a novel, a biography of the planet. The shelter you might build is made from the beams of a global traveler. This understanding transforms the beach from a static picture into a dynamic living hub. You are not standing at the edge of the land. You are standing at the grand central terminal of the natural world where arrivals and departures have been happening on geological timescales. Every grain of sand, every shell, every piece of driftwood is a passenger with a ticket from somewhere else. The tranquility of the scene is the calm after and before an immense journey. And as you sit on that log, watching the sunset, you are literally resting on a veteran of a voyage that makes human exploration look like a trip to the corner store. You are connected through this simple object to rainforests, river gorges, deep-sea trenches, and polar ice. That connection, that visceral sense of a linked planet, is the true treasure the Driftwood brings. And it's a treasure that is free for anyone to find, if they just know how to read the code. Let's zoom out further, because the story of this single piece of driftwood is the story of the beach itself. In fact, you could argue that without driftwood, many of the idyllic tropical beaches we love wouldn't even exist in their current form. Think about the classic image, the white sand, the leaning palm tree, and a beautifully shaped piece of driftwood in the foreground. That driftwood isn't just decoration, it's an engineer. When waves and wind push sand inland, they often do it in chaotic, unstable sheets. But when a large object like a log is deposited on the beach, it acts as a trap. Sand piles up against it, creating the beginnings of a dune. This dune stabilizes the back of the beach, allowing pioneer plants, often seeds that arrived on other driftwood or via birds, to take root. These plants, like beach grasses and vines, bind the sand with their roots, creating a more stable barrier. This barrier protects the inland from storm surges and creates a sheltered area where larger vegetation, like those iconic palm trees, can eventually grow. So, the palm tree shading you might very well be growing in soil anchored decades or centuries ago by a different piece of driftwood. The beach is building itself, using the materials delivered to it by the ocean, and driftwood is the foundational rebar in that construction project. This means the beach you're walking on is a living archive, and the old or buried driftwood beneath your feet are the historical records, the foundation stones of this paradise. This leads us to a deeper, almost philosophical layer of the driftwood code: time. We live our lives on a human scale, years, decades. A piece of driftwood operates on a geological scale. The tree lived for centuries. Its oceanic journey may have lasted decades. And once it lands on the beach, its final roll can span more centuries. It might slowly bury itself in sand, become petrified by minerals, and eventually turn into a fossil, a literal stone record of its era. Or it might be slowly worn down by the abrasion of sand, becoming smaller and smaller, until it's just a fragment, then a grain, ultimately merging with the countless other fragments that make up the beach itself, that perfect white sand. Some of it is pulverized coral and shell, but some of it is the final, powdered form of ancient trees from continents away, their carbon journey finally complete as they dissolve into the vast mineral soup of the coastline. So, when you feel sand between your toes, you are touching the last page of some stories and the middle chapters of others. The beach is not a snapshot, it's a time-lapse photograph where the frames are centuries apart. The driftwood in its various stages, fresh, bleached, buried, crumbling, are all frames of that time-lapse, visible simultaneously. This is a place where deep time is not an abstract concept in a museum. It's lying around in plain sight, waiting for you to sit on it. Now, let's bring this understanding into the modern world. In our era of GPS, satellite tracking, and instant communication, the driftwood's slow, silent journey feels like an artifact from a different age. And that's precisely its power. It represents a truth that our high-tech world often obscures: the physical, tangible connectedness of Earth's systems. We see data on screens about ocean temperatures and deforestation. But here's an object that has physically felt those changes. A log from a deforested region might carry the scars of that rapid erosion. The species hitching a ride on it might be invasive, moved by human-altered currents, or by riding on human-made debris, which is a tragic modern counterpart to natural driftwood. The driftwood is a canary in the coal mine for planetary health. Its journey times, the routes it takes, even the temperature data locked in the layers of its barnacles, are all physical records of a changing climate. Scientists actually study driftwood patterns to understand historical current flows and compare them to today's. So, this humble object is also a scientific instrument. By reading its code, we can literally read the history of our planet's climate and oceans. It is a diary that wrote itself, using the environment as its ink. And this brings us to a crucial, urgent point about perception and responsibility. When you see the beach and its driftwood is connected, living and ancient, your relationship to it changes. It's no longer just a vacation spot to consume, it's a node in a vast, fragile network. The plastic bottle next to the driftwood isn't just litter, it's a grotesque parody of the driftwood's journey. A toxic imposter in a system of natural exchange. Understanding the nobility of the driftwood's journey makes the pollution of our oceans feel even more like a profound desecration. This shift in perspective is the ultimate gift of cracking the driftwood code. It turns a leisurely walk into an active ring of discovery. You start to ask questions. You look at the grain of the wood and wonder what kind of tree it was. You see the twist in its shape and imagine the storm that formed it. You notice the mix of shells and seeds in the sand around it and see the community it supports. The beach becomes alive with narratives. Every piece tells a different story, a fast journey from a nearby mangrove, a slow circumnavigation in a gyre, a dramatic escape from a typhoon. You become a collector of stories, not shells, and in doing so, you forge a deeper, more meaningful bond with the natural world. You are no longer a passive observer. You are an active participant in the story because your presence, your curiosity, and your understanding are now part of the beach's ongoing narrative. You are witnessing the grand cycle, and in witnessing it, you honor it. This mindful engagement is the antidote to indifference. It's what transforms someone from a tourist into a steward. And it all starts by seeing one piece of weathered wood not as trash or even just as art, but as an oracle. A teacher washed up on the shore, offering its wisdom for free to anyone who will take a moment to listen. And with that mindset, we are ready for the final, most important part of this journey, what we do with this knowledge. We've followed the epic, we've decoded the message, and we've understood our place in the story. Now, it's time for action. Because knowledge without action is just trivia. And the story of the driftwood isn't a fairy tale with a guaranteed happy ending. It's a real-time drama playing out on every coastline on Earth, and it needs a conscious audience. So, here's your call to arms, your invitation to become an active character in this global narrative. First, and most simply, the next time you are on any beach, tropical or otherwise, practice reading the driftwood code. Don't just step over it. Pause, look at it, turn it over gently. Examine the textures, the colors, the life on it. Make a guess about its journey. Was it from nearby or far away? Was it battered or smoothed? This simple act of focused attention is a revolutionary one. It breaks the spell of distraction and re-enchants your world. Share this perspective with someone else. Point out an interesting piece to a friend or your kids. Tell them, look at this. This might have come from a forest thousands of miles away. You'll be passing on the code, creating another detective. This creates a ripple effect of awareness far more powerful than any social media post because it's rooted in direct, tangible experience with the natural world. Second, become a guardian of the process. This means understanding that while taking a small, beautiful piece of driftwood as a souvenir might seem harmless, it is removing a key component from the beach's ecosystem. That piece was a sand trap, a habitat, a nursery. In many protected areas, removing driftwood is actually illegal for this very reason. So admire it, photograph it, sketch it, sit on it, but leave it for the beach to use. Let it complete its geological purpose. Your photo and your memory are the best souvenirs. Furthermore, when you see human-made debris, plastic, foam, fishing nets interloped with the natural driftwood, remove it. That plastic bottle is not on the same journey. It's pollution hijacking the scenery. By taking a few minutes to collect trash, you are acting as a quality control agent for the beach, helping to ensure the natural story isn't drowned out by our waste. You are honoring the driftwood's noble journey by clearing the stage of its toxic imitators. This is hands-on stewardship, and it feels profoundly good because you are aligning your actions with the cycle you now understand. Third, take this understanding beyond the beach. The Driftwood story is a parable for interconnectedness. The rainforest where it began, the rivers that carried it, the oceans that transported it, the atmosphere that stormed it ashore, they are all one system. Supporting the health of any part of that system supports the whole. This can guide your choices. Be mindful of where your wood products come from. Support sustainable forestry that protects the great riverside trees that might one day become messengers. Be conscious of your carbon footprint, because the climate you influence directly affects the storms that guide driftwood and the ocean currents that are its highways. Support organizations that protect rainforests, clean oceans, and preserve coastal habitats. When you do this, you are no longer just a spectator of the Driftwood Code. You are helping to write favorable conditions for the next chapter, for the next generation of cosmic voyagers. You are ensuring that a child 50 years from now can also stand on a beach and find a teacher in the sun-bleached wood, and have their mind open to the wonders of a connected planet. Finally, let this change your definition of beauty and value. Our culture often prizes the new, the shiny, the pristine. The driftwood is none of those things. It is old, worn, battered, and simple. Yet, as we've discovered, it contains more story, more adventure, and more scientific data than the most polished luxury item. By valuing the driftwood, you are making a quiet stand for a different kind of wealth, the wealth of history, of journey, of ecological service. You are recognizing that the most fascinating things in the world are often lying in plain sight, disguised by their simplicity. This mindset can transform not just your beach walks, but your walks through a forest, a park, or even your own backyard. Everything has a story, a journey, a connection. The driftwood is just one of the most eloquent teachers. So I leave you with this final powerful call to action. Become a translator for the silent stories. The next time you feel the need for awe, for a connection to something vast and ancient, you don't necessarily need to book an expensive trip or seek out a famous landmark. Go to the nearest shoreline, find a piece of driftwood, sit with it. Let your imagination decode its journey from a towering tree to this tranquil rest. Feel the connection thrumming through it, a connection to the heart of the planet. And in that moment, you will have unlocked more than just the secret of the beach. You will have unlocked a new way of seeing your world, where every element is a word in a grand, ongoing story. And you, by choosing to listen, become a vital part of that story's future. Now, go out there and raid. The planet is waiting to tell you its secrets.